Sustainable financing, impact investing is rising on the international agenda, but what's actually behind that label of impact investment? Could it have some real substance, combining investing with building a better world? High-level representatives of national banks and international stakeholders are going to be answering these questions in this session. Impact investment is investment that optimizes the risk, the return, and the impact to benefit people and planet. It does so by setting specific social and environmental objectives against the financial ones, and by measuring their achievement. So I mentioned it started with pioneers around 2000. Just in the last couple of years, it's grown quite spectacularly. The Global Impact Investors Network suggests around $250 billion of investment so far.
There's a growing expectation that in seeking a financial return, savers and investors are also expecting it to do good. So they want to do well by doing good. Now, some of them might be to the point of thinking they don't want a financial return at all, which takes you more into return of capital or philanthropy. Others are saying, no, I can't afford to do that. This is my long-term pension, so I need a bit of return.
The topic of impact investment is critical really just for one reason. It's critical to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I know this is an audience that is probably familiar with the SDGs, but just in case a few of you may not be, this is the roadmap for the future that was adopted by all governments at the UN back in 2015. It has a time frame through 2030, and essentially the mission of the goals is to end extreme poverty, create an inclusive economy that all can access, and to protect our planet. This is an ambitious agenda. All stakeholders are needed to commit to it and to act on behalf of it if we are to achieve the SDGs. And certainly the investor community and the impact investment community, I think, has one of the most important roles to play.
So the question is, should not that be the norm in the first place? That we are looking at inclusivity, that with 8 men owning as much as 3 billion people itself has showed that the existing types of investments have not been right. So can we make it right and make impact investment the norm rather than making it a separate category? And that's why for me it's very critical where the poor become the innovators and the entrepreneurs in an inclusive world, and where we start looking at investment in a truly fashion where it should have been in that place in the first place.
We don't get good people if you ignore social responsibility, if you ignore environmental standards, if you ignore a code of conduct.
You know, I see impact investing as part of a broad restructuring of the way we think about money. And if you think about it on an individual basis, this came up today in some of our conversations at the retreat, I think there's a cognitive dissonance that many investors feel. As individuals, you kind of have one set of values, but when you invest, you tend to kind of put your values kind of to the side a little bit in your quest for your stated objective of, let's say, 10% or 12% or 15%, whatever that is for you as an investor. I think impact investing is the beginning of a restructuring where we're trying to reduce that cognitive dissonance. We're trying to bring our values as individuals together with our economic objectives.
When you have rapid market evolution, rapid market development in any market, but particularly financial services, the potential for good outcomes and the potential for unintended outcomes go hand in hand. And as Cliff said, really we're seeing in impact and sustainable investing rapid evolution. One way of guiding through and making sure that you get the right outcomes with the right intentions is to have a set of framework principles that will help people know what good looks like. One way of guiding through and making sure that you get the right outcomes with the right intentions is to have a set of framework principles that will help people know what good looks like.
You would think, because impact is a good thing, so you would expect aspirational approaches. And whilst it's always good to tap into the positive of human nature, history tells us do not expect the negative parts of human nature to suddenly vanish because you think you're doing a good thing. And understanding how you build principles to be locked in for the good and locked out for the bad is going to be a really important part of this.
I'll give you a very small example of something that didn't work terribly well, has been corrected, but it's happening all the time, which is getting decent housing, safe, decent housing that's environmentally reasonable for disadvantaged people is a massive focus, and there isn't enough of that going on. But it happens from time to time that you do get a community development, you do get the housing. What was happening in one community was, that was great. Then what did the people do who got the houses? They went down the road to a shop and bought the white goods, that's the fridge, the cooker, the microwave, the television, on dreadful financial terms, absolutely dreadful financial terms that meant they ended up in debt within 2 to 3 years and had to leave the home because they couldn't maintain the... So we have to think holistically, we have to define what value creation really means. And if we think value creation is a house and a roof over your head, but there's no furniture unless you buy it in a very poor way, or there is no community around it, or there is no centre of community development and enabling people to see a different way out of poverty than being given something, then we're only addressing the tip of the iceberg. So for me, it's creating more value than extract over the longer term. I think we can particularly do it at a community level, but it's defining that value with community, sustainable community interest in mind.
We have endless number of organisations that act to provide clean water in sub-Saharan Africa. We only have a tiny handful, that look at sanitation. But bad sanitation kills far more children than bad water. Because basically, babies don't drink water, they drink mother's milk, and mothers are usually resilient enough to process the water. However, when you look at that, we had one organisation, a very large foundation, Children's Investment Fund Foundation, that analysed and analysed and analysed to get the exact best possible impact for their money. And as a consequence, they sat on their money for so long that our charity regulator slapped them down and said, it's about time you actually spent some of this money rather than just thinking about it. So, we want to spend our money in the places that are most important, for sure, but we don't want to let analysis paralyze action. We need to get out there.
Let's divide the monies that people have between expendable income and non-expendable income, and the people's needs versus wants. Today, many of the investments, it's for expendable income and wants. In the impact investment space, we are working with non-expendable income and needs. Moment you take any rupee or any dollar out from people that should have, the money should have gone into creation of assets, away to consumption, you're actually making the poor poorer. And today, and that's exactly where impact investment has to be, is am I taking that rupee or dollar into creating an asset for the poor? If you look at social and environmental sustainability, automatically you'll become financially sustainable. Provided you put all the pieces of the puzzle together. For example, if I have to actually go to a client with a solar-powered sewing machine, instead of doing 2 shirts a day, she does 8 shirts a day. A typical impact person says, great, 8. But if from a practitioner's perspective, I have to see where does she actually sell the extra 6 shirts. If she doesn't have the market, she actually goes into poverty while I had my social impact done in my measurements. That's unethical. That's where a lot of the impact investors fail in looking at investments. A lot of the practitioners fail in running a business, in fact. So what we basically do is create partners of creating the ecosystem of finance, affordable market linkages for the poor to actually sell their goods, and then you create the business models. Also, how do you understand the end user? The best financial lesson I have learned is from a street vendor who said, 300 rupees a month is expensive, but 10 rupees a day is fine. The question is, how do you create a financial product that matches her daily cash flow? So it is not difficult to create businesses for impact, provided you are able to be in the shoes of the end user. And that, unfortunately, I do not see practitioners in impact investors' team to do a due diligence. And that is where a lot of the impact is actually failing. And you can create a profitable business provided we overturn and say, how do you make poor the entrepreneurs, poor the investors, and poor as the innovators? We need to flip it and not use the word poor as beneficiaries. Once you stop using the word poor as beneficiaries, you can actually make a profitable business.
So every time a local investor connects directly to a local farmer and makes a loan, I see tremendous multiple benefits, community building, trust, and a tiny piece of something which is big, which would be called localization as the counterbalance to globalization.
So I think we all need to have a sense of pride, ownership, and excitement about the opportunities that they present, including the $12 trillion economic opportunity that they present, which was recently laid out by a Business Commission for Sustainable Development. So we should all feel pride and get working on them.